Okay, so today's video is about to get a little bit spicy over here on my channel. I am going to be critiquing things that I find tacky when it comes to hosting or just interiors in general. I'm not actually going to be diving into furniture or actual styling throughout your space, but I am going to be talking about things like not serving your guests drinks when they come to visit, or relying way too much on designer furniture and brand names when it comes to styling in your space. So if I've hit a nerve with any of that, I am sorry, but honestly, not that much, because maybe you need to hear this for your guests' peace of mind. And you know what? Before we start this video, I have had this soda sitting in my fridge for a couple of nights now, and I feel like having a nice, cool beverage. So here we go. This is my Cove soda. If you're Canadian, you may have seen this in Costco. If you're American, I don't know if this is out yet, but anyway, this is so good. It is the best soda. Today I have the raspberry one. It is honestly just the best. And speaking of drinks, that is the first thing that I actually find tacky when it comes to interiors, is offering your guests a drink. Well, the first thing that is tacky is not offering your guests a drink. The second thing is offering them a drink, but having no ledge, side table, or even coffee table for them to set it on. This is going to sound actually pretty far-fetched, but this is a rule that lots of designers like to follow, and it's having at least one ledge or side table next to any given seat in your space. And this is obviously super easy for something like a side chair where you can just add a little side table next to it, but even on a larger sofa, sometimes it is nice to have some sort of a console, or in my case, a bookshelf where somebody could actually set their drink on when they are sitting in the middle of the seat. And next up is spaces that smell like cleaning products. I am somebody who power cleans my space before hosting anybody over, but I will say this can be slightly overpowering when you walk into somebody's house and it truly does smell like they have just been scrubbing the floors for hours before you got there. For me personally, I actually love to clean with vinegar. Initially, your space does smell like vinegar, but this is something that does dissipate fairly quickly, and I do find it reduces other odors that might be lingering in your space. So this is always a great way to go if you are looking to clean kind of hours before people get there. And with that, another thing that I find incredibly tacky in interiors is when you try and cover up your home with some sort of really powerful scent. For me personally, I tend to hate anything that smells like food or vanilla. Truthfully, anything from Bath and Body Works, I'm just not super jazzed about in terms of the scent. If you are someone who is really into scented candles, I would actually stick with something that's a little bit more earthy or fresh, like a fresh cotton or sandalwood. I feel like these are so natural, you really can't go wrong with them. But again, you do have to err on the side of caution because sometimes these can just be so overpowering in your space. If you're a friend of the channel, this next one really goes without saying, but it's having really bright overhead lights that honestly feel like you're in an interrogation room. Whether you're just setting the mood for yourself or you are actually hosting people in your space, it is just so much nicer to be having soft lighting options like lamp lighting, or even having dimmers on any of your lights. This is just going to soften the mood of the room, and it's not going to feel so harsh when people walk in. I also find softer lighting just promotes that feeling of relaxation in your space. Your guests are going to feel so much more comfortable, and I think you'll be surprised on how much easier conversation flows when you actually have dimmer lighting in this way. Another one I've chatted about before on my channel is the idea of having your TV as the focal point of every single room. Now, I do know for most of us, we really can't escape this, but if you do live in a space that's a little bit larger, or you do have multiple seating areas to work with, I would encourage you to make one of them without a TV. This is just going to be a great conversation zone where it doesn't feel like the main goal of the space is going to be to watch TV. And in the interest of promoting conversation, whether it's with guests or just your family when you're hanging out in this space, I do find a little bit of background noise or music is a great way to go. I do find find it quite tacky when you're in somebody's space and you could hear a literal pin drop. I just think it's so nice to crack a window. Maybe you can hear some street noise outside. Even putting on background music, again, it just softens the space. It makes it feel not so deafening when you are going to speak and you're cutting the silence like a knife. Next up is the idea of having fake coziness. This really could look like having 100 toss cushions in your space, but you still don't feel that welcomed in the space to actually sit down and hang out and get comfortable. I often feel this way when somebody has just a really fluffy and furry rug. It feels nice on your feet, but part of me cannot get comfortable because I'm just not sure what kind of germs, dirt, or debris could be lingering around in that shag carpet. And I do want to stress the importance of practicality when it comes to your home. Sometimes we can go through all of the trouble of cleaning a bathroom so that it looks immaculate for guests, but we might have missed adding a hand towel or hand soap. These are just very small details that honestly are the main function of the space, so you never want to forget them, especially when you're hosting people in your home. Now, I already chatted about my pet peeve when it comes to showing up to somebody's home and them not offering you a beverage, but the other item I find tacky after a certain age or stage of life is going over to somebody's home and them offering you wine in like a novelty mug. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this if you're going over and they're serving you coffee or tea and you get kind of a funky cool mug, but I will say there is just a level of classiness that comes with offering somebody an alcoholic beverage and having the correct stemware to serve it in. And I'm not saying that this has to be anything fancy or expensive. Personally, all of my stemware is actually thrifted. I just find this is such a thoughtful and classy touch when you are serving somebody a nice beverage. And I have to say, there's not much that could be worse than not offering your guests a drink upon arrival. But probably the one thing that comes pretty close is when you show up at somebody's house and they just give you the blanket.
Make yourself at home. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. Feel free.
We all know that it's so awkward to actually go through the act of doing this unless you're super comfortable in somebody else's home and you've been there a little bit and you understand kind of how the mechanics of their home runs. But personally, I am not just getting up and going through and rooting through your fridge to find myself a beverage. You can ask me what I want and you can bring it to me. Another component to being a gracious host, in my opinion, is having seating options for the number of people you've invited over. I do find it kind of strange when you show up at a house party where, there's maybe 10 to 15 people invited, but there's literally just one sofa and a couple armchairs. It does make it kind of awkward to be a guest, knowing that you're basically going to be standing for majority of your visit. And I'm probably really about to tick some people off on this one, especially if you're American. I do apologize, however, I am Canadian, and in my opinion, I find it tacky to keep your shoes on in somebody else's home. In Canada, it is just a social norm. If you go to anybody's home, stranger or friend, you have to take off your shoes. It's not even asked, like it is a given. Shoes are coming off. So I do find it weird when people keep their shoes on. It's not very often that you see it. I do hear about it sometimes on TikTok from Americans who are in Canada. They do say that this is strange. But to me, I just think it would be so much weirder if you kept your shoes on. I also think it's just common courtesy when you are hosting somebody in your home for the first time that you point out where the bathrooms are. It can be so awkward, especially if you're going to a larger gathering or group event, when you walk in and you don't actually know your way around the home, you don't really know where to go to the washroom, you have to kind of awkwardly ask somebody or connect with the host. So I do think this is just common courtesy when somebody enters your home. You do just point out, hey, if you need to go to the washroom, it's over here. I am a huge advocate when it comes to secondhand furniture. I would say majority of my home is either thrifted or purchased from Facebook Marketplace. So I will say a small pet peeve of mine is people who just love to flash designer labels in their home. Don't get me wrong, I love the concept of an Hermes blanket if you found it at a flea market or an estate sale, but to display something like this just to give the illusion or the appearance influence that you have money to spend when it comes to your furniture, to me is just a little bit performative, and it takes away from the aspect of finding pieces that really tell a story or actually connect to your personality. Another great example of this is coffee table books. I know so many people love to display, a Tom Ford or a Dior book on their coffee table. This just feels so disingenuous to me. I feel like you'd be way better served to actually have coffee table books that mean something to you, or they align with your interests and hobbies. And for sure, they should look like you've actually browsed through them a time or two. This to me just means so much more in your space than having a book that only screams, I had money to burn on this. And along that concept of performative decorating, I also hate the idea of investing all of your money and energy into the items that people see, but maybe not necessarily the items that you use every day. A great example of this is a bed that maybe has a ton of decorative toss cushions, but underneath the covers, the sheets are super ratty, there's holes in them, they're not holding up well. The same thing goes for having a beautiful aesthetic bathroom, but you go to dry your hands after washing them and the towel's all ratty and used. These are the elements that actually make your space feel elevated in your everyday use, and they matter so much more to be investing in than all of the extras that really don't matter that much to the entire scheme of your space. I love to talk about this one, but it's the idea of having an aggressively styled space that doesn't feel like you can actually experience any joy or chaos. And I find this is often the case for people who invest so heavily in trying to achieve that all white aesthetic or that very glam aesthetic. Often this will look so great in pictures or for the first 5 minutes that you're in the room, but all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I can't spill my drink, or I can't even sneeze in this room because everything is just so picture perfect. And I feel like I'm definitely going to get some heat for this one, but if you're a pet parent, I feel like you're with me on this. I feel so bad when I'm in somebody's space and their animals are not allowed on the furniture. I find it absolutely heartbreaking. Like, I can't have fun in your space because I feel like your pets can't have fun in the space. I also absolutely hate the concept of trying to impress everybody that comes over to your space and not actually trying to connect or engage in conversation. This one is such an easy pitfall to fall into because you just want your guests to have a great time. You want everything to go perfectly, but often you can forget the important part of just simply being present and trying to have a good time with the people you have over. I also feel like it's tacky when your space doesn't feel cherished or loved. I absolutely love to be a guest in somebody's home where there's pictures and trinkets from their travels and their life, and I just really get a sense of their personality and that feeling that I have been invited into their space. This honestly can be so jarring when you walk into somebody's space and there are absolutely no signs of life. There's no personal trinkets. There's no photographs on display. Heck, even the sofa feels like it's just been wiped clean and there's no toss cushions on it. Even as a designer, I personally do not even care that much of what somebody's home looks like. For me, it's all about how it feels. When I'm in somebody's space, I just love feeling that connection and that glimpse into their lifestyle. I also find having 0 wildcard elements slightly tacky, even if you don't necessarily live in that serial killer apartment that's very white and sterile, but you have been trying to add subtle pops of personality in your space. I just personally find if you're not throwing in a fun wildcard element here or there, you're just always going to fall short. So personally, I think everybody should get a little bit funky when it comes to their home. That could be having just, a really whimsical lampshade. It could be having a ceramic frog on your coffee table. Just something that adds a little bit of personality and laughter in the space is always a great element to add. I also find it tacky when people overly apologize for how their space looks. I get it. I am somebody who loves interiors. I make videos like this online. My home never looks like what I want it to look like, but I always invite people in and I say, welcome to my space. This is what it looks like right now. And 9 times out of 10, people always compliment me on what it looks like. They have no idea the vision I have for it moving forward. They really just are there to enjoy it in the capacity that it's in right now. So to me, I hate it when somebody tries to dismiss my compliment and they say,
Oh, we're gonna rip up that flooring next year. Or, oh, this is the room we haven't got to.
you have nothing to apologize for. Homes come in every shape, size, and stage, and it's just something that comes with being a homeowner. I also have a hard time with people who are just very obsessive about the cleanliness of their space. Again, it feels like you can't really get that comfortable because it is so neat and tidy. And it's even worse when you're hanging out with them in their home and they're still cleaning while you're sitting there trying to hold a conversation. So that's all of the things that I find tacky for this video. Honestly, if any of these made you wince, same. I am somebody who has done at least half of the items on this list, so don't worry, we've all been there. I just really wanted to point out the difference between a home that feels very stiff and staged and one that truly feels like it's been loved and curated and just feels so warm and welcoming to anyone who comes through the door. So if any of these felt just a little too familiar, then good. It could just be the wake-up call you need to improve your space and make your guests as well as yourself and your family feel that much more fulfilled in your home. So don't be shy. Let me know in the comments what you find tacky when it comes to interiors and hosting. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I can't wait to see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching.